Cam Robinson is the director of content, director of film scouting for Elite Prospects. He joins us typically Tuesdays. How are you?
I'm doing well, boys. How we doing?
Yeah,
Good.
fantastic. We're a week and a half from your Christmas, the NHL draft, and we're 2 weeks away from Canada Day and free agency. Cam, what's going on with the Canucks? What are you hearing these days?
Seems like a little all quiet on the Western Front there. I checked around with some sources and nothing really loud that's out there. I did have one say that's strangely quiet in Vancouver for how much they're expecting them to get done over the next 10, 14 days. I pushed back and I was like, well, what do you mean? Is there something? And speculation maybe they have the framework in place on a deal that they're waiting for the AHL finals to conclude before pulling the trigger on it. Maybe they're waiting to get closer to the draft as their pick becomes maybe more valuable. If guys start to slip a little bit, that might be enough to nudge it over the finish line if they are looking to move that 15th overall pick. But as of right now, nothing really percolating that I'm hearing anyways.
Yeah. You picked up anything on this having to buy out Paolo Aquilini, and are there legitimate concerns that this could affect the Canucks' finances and their ability to spend?
We know that they need to come up with a whole bunch of money to buy out Paolo, and we know that the decision making isn't going to be moving from Francesco anytime soon. So I, like you and several kind of in the industry, have heard that they are looking to sell off some assets, whether that's some of their restaurant franchises like Pizza Huts, whether that's getting into bed with a massive hedge fund or a marketing group or investment group to bring up that, because it's going to be in the 9-figure sort of thing that they're going to have to generate, right? So. Again, nothing locked in, but whether that will impact their spending this summer, could come into play if like liquidity is an issue. Are they really going to be looking to sign big contracts? I didn't expect them to be major players, or don't expect them to be major players in free agency. I think that they would probably add around the periphery a little bit in that regard and more focus on trying to fill in the gaps via trade.
Yeah, and it's. Look, to their infinite credit, the Aquilinis have financed the hockey operations to the hilt over their tenureship. Yeah. The one exception, of course, was the COVID year where the taps were turned off heading into that.
They've also got the practice facility checked to right, which presumably is coming to Cam. So, we're you talked about 9 figures. That's going to be in the 9 figures as well, or low 9 figures, but it adds up.
It does. Does it ever? Yeah, for sure. And it isn't an endless supply, right? Like there is a spot where it's going to get uncomfortable for them to keep financing these types of projects and spending up to the cap and maximizing your executive staff and your scouting staff and paying coaches that aren't there and things like that. That all those things add up over the years for sure. So it will be interesting to see. Like I said, I wasn't expecting anything major in free agency before this, but I don't think this is going to help them out in looking. If they were maybe contemplating going after maybe a second tier big fish rather than maybe those really big name ones that are going to have half the market chasing them.
There's a lot of players that you forget when you are in the Canucks category of, and we're back to hockey operations now rather than business ops when I say this, when you're looking to spend cap money, but not looking to spend a lot of it because you can't. They don't have scads of space. You kind of forget certain players exist around the league. You're like scouring the dusty corners of teams' lineups and third line wingers. You're like, oh yeah, there's that guy. I remember him. He had a good year like 4 years ago. Should the Canucks try that? I saw Jonathan Drouin's name as an unrestricted free agent. I'm like, what's Drouin been up to? So you go down these roads, but ultimately you need teams to sell. And the Pittsburgh Penguins are the only ones that have really stuck their hand up and said that we are going to sell. Is there anything there that makes sense for the Vancouver Canucks?
As far as makes sense, we're expecting Brock Besser to test the market and to likely be moving on, very likely to be moving on. Yeah. And so they're going to have to look to fill that spot as well as adding a second line center to the guard. So, the names that are kind of out there, like everybody's been, Jonathan Marchessault, he comes at a price tag that's not too bad. 3 years left at 5.5, but he's 35 next season. That decline has already started. We saw it with Nashville. He's cheaper. He's got a cup winner, but it's like you could do worse, but it's like you could probably do better. I look at Rickard Rakell He's 32 or will be next season. 35 goal scorer last year, 70 points. So he's on the high end of his value right now. The Pittsburgh connection, obviously, Rutherford and Alvin have enjoyed making deals with Pittsburgh. $5 million, 3 years left on his deal. Now, here's an interesting kind of angle to look at that too, is that, the Penguins just hired the Rangers assistant coach, right? He would know a guy like Victor Mancini probably pretty well. So let's say, like, is the 15th overall pick in play? Is a prospect in play with that too? If the Canucks maybe have something that could be in the works right now and they're waiting for the AHL, this is all speculation. Could it be a guy like Victor Mancini that's included in a package like that to Pittsburgh to get a guy like Rickard Rakell who could instantly slot in to your top six? And you could hope to squeeze 30 goals out of him. Probably realistically, it's like, hey, 25 to 35 on the really high end side. And it's a nice stopgap for those 3 years. You don't have to give a 7 or an 8 year deal to somebody and maybe overpay for their latter years. He's cost controlled at $5 million with the cap going up. It's not terrible, but obviously the risk of him dropping down from that 70.35 goal level is high.
Yeah.
Hey, Cam, we've heard Alexis Lafreniere's name is out there with the Rangers. And, of course, once upon a time, his agent was Emily Castengay, now Canucks AGM. What did everybody miss about him as a first overall? Or did they miss? Is it possible he still turns into the player that everybody projected at number 1 overall? And, it's a sizable contract. Like, is that a potential player that you could get without a huge trade return?
The Rangers are open for business. I can say that much, with full throat. I think Keandre Miller is definitely on the block. I think they are listening on Lafrenière. And he hasn't even started that 7-year deal at 7.45 million. Took another, a little step back last year after maybe taking a step forward. He put up 50 plus points. It's like, hey, maybe we could expect 60. But there's a couple things that have to go right for him that he did very, very well as a junior age player. And one of those was he shot the puck. He shot the puck way more than he's been able to shoot the puck at the NHL level. I think he was sub 2 shots per game last season. Just, you can't do that. He probably needs a fresh start, to be quite frank. He needs to be given all the power play time. He needs to be on your first unit. You have to force feed him those minutes. You have to find a way to unlock his shot. I don't think that at his age now, it's unlikely we're going to see a first overall pick caliber production from him in his prime. But to think that he couldn't become a 75, 80 point player, I think it's still viable. It's still there in the right situation, surrounded by the right talent. And so with that contract, you would hope to get a little discount on the price to acquire. But he's also a former first overall pick. And even though it's been 5 years now, that stink stays with you, right? It lingers for a long, long time. And so that'll hold his value up, I think, too. So it wouldn't be cheap. And I'm sure the Rangers, if they are looking to move him, are looking to move him for a piece that is going to vault them forward in a big way right now.
There's a lot of smoke around Anaheim these days. They've already made the trade for Chris Kreider. They're being connected with Mitch Marner.
Yeah.
And some of the other top free agents. Pat Verbeek is even doing a bit of a media tour, and that's a regular, right? Tend to like to do that. And, of course, we've known for some time that, Zegras isn't exactly his cut of player. Just one more year on Zegras. He's still an RFA after that. They've been shopping him for a while, and, boy, if they think or if they do land big fish, you wonder whether Zegras is the odd man out. And, again, a potential lower cost in a trade return. Talk to me about Zegras and what you see happening there.
He's the type of reclamation project I can get behind on skill alone. We know he's a highly skilled player, and he showed it, early on in his career that he could put up some good points too. Like you said, he's still young. Now, it's an upside bet. It's a swing that might not work out for you, but it shouldn't cost you that much to get him. And, maybe he could be that second line center, that offensive guy that needs to be sheltered a little bit defensively too. But at the same time, it's like, it was very well known that he had, some attitude, some character issues, some, just not maybe a great guy in the room, not well loved by everybody. Not sure if he's grown out of that yet, or if he ever will, if he hasn't. So, that's tacked on top of it. So if you trust your leadership group and you trust your room that you can bring in a player like that and they can manage him, and then you can maybe squeeze the most out of that skill package that's there, then, I'm not upset about taking those types of chances. And that's the type of thing that if you can get a player like that at a low cost and then you can make it break right, that's how you really get ahead, right? You don't get ahead by paying full freight on somebody and still hoping that they break right.
Canucks have a good room. They've got a strong room.
They do. Yeah. So
notoriously strong, good room.
Right? So, I mean, it shouldn't be a problem at all. Shouldn't be any problem. No, I know. But so we'll see if it's a fit for Vancouver. But I do think I'm still waiting for some team to take a chance on him. And whether that is like if the price just comes down far enough that a team's like, we have to do this. Right. And then maybe it works out for you. But, you mentioned Drouin. It happened with him, too, earlier in his career. Right. Is that teams were still willing to take a chance on the skill package and the lofty draft pick that he was.
Although Drouin never had back-to-back 65-point seasons, basically, like Zegras had, like that you can't turn away from that. God knows where that player has gone, but you know that it's in there.
Yep, and that's the thing, and that's what anchors teams to keep coming back and looking, and that's what will keep a guy like Elias Pettersson if they keep dangling his name out on the trade markets. That's what teams will keep coming back to. Like, this is a 100-point guy. He did 100 points, right? Like, if we're gonna trade for somebody, why not trade for somebody who has huge upside?
Well, you also have to think about just what this team chemistry-wise and makeup looks like for the Vancouver Canucks. I'm talking about going forward. And if Elias Pettersson is, only they know what's in their heart about the future of Elias Pettersson. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about a center 1-2 punch of Pettersson and Zegras if that looks playoff ready for me.
And Hedl, the question marks with his down the middle. That is soft, that is light, that is injury concern, that is trouble for sure. So there's no like obvious player that you would want that is available to slot into that kind of 2C spot for them. So that's why I think they're going to have to get a little creative, and maybe they're going to have to add on the wing too to support that center who's in the middle.
And that's why I've said you make these acquisitions for the now, and you worry about tweaking for the cup contention when you're a little bit closer to cup contention. Like Rossi Pettersson is not great down the middle either for what we're talking about. But you know what? Get to the playoffs, then you can start to worry about tweaking, to win in the playoffs. But they are so far from that. Just add some skill first. No?
Do you agree with that philosophically, Kim?
I do. That like the fact that that Rossi and Pettersson down the middle wouldn't be ideal, but at the same time, it's like just go get talent, go get younger talent now, and figure it all out when the time comes. I keep looking at a team like San Jose. San Jose is coming, right? They're gonna have all this really exciting young talent, and then you go spend in free agency. You overspend in free agency, or you overpay in a deal to go get the one or two pieces that now it's like, okay, we're missing this. We'll go pay for it, right? So if it's Vancouver and down the line, they're like, hey, like Pettersson Rossi is not great for us in a matchup against a top Western Conference team. Okay, we'll go overpay for like that big, strong center who can also be a 2C for you, and maybe that pushes Rossi
or
down
a couple of hulking wingers or something.
Exactly, right? Yeah, fill it out in however you can do it, but you got to get to that point first. And if you keep trying to just like, we need to be a cup contender right now, you can't buy your way into that. You just simply cannot do that. You have to get value in places, you have to draft and develop well, and then you overpay when it's time to go.
Hey, is the Rossi market softer than many and perhaps Minnesota may have expected?
From my understanding, yes. And that's just because, I said it months ago on the show or weeks ago, whatever it was, that I didn't think Minnesota was all that sweet on Marco Rossi. And it's because not a lot of teams want to have a 5'9" center as in their top six. And if you do, he better be so good, right? He better be Braden Point, and he's not even that small. Nobody's really jumping up and down to get Marco Rossi, despite how talented he is, despite the production last season, because they also look at it, it's like, he played a ton of time with Kaprizov and saw time with Boldy. Good center, lots of skill, but not driving, not expected to drive. So if you bring him in and you're like, now you need to be our play driver on a second line and you're that size, unless you have that big hulking 1C, it's not a great fit for a lot of teams, and especially buyers. So I do think the value is a little bit lower.
All right. I want to ask them about some draft prospects, but if you have anything Canucks NHL related, by all means.
No.
Because we talked about Bowen Byram last week with Cam, so we'll dispense with
the list. One on the AHL level. Lekkerimäki's absence from the playoff lineup. Concerning for you, understandable. Where are you on that spectrum?
It's understandable. It's understandable for sure. I had once like strength and conditioning guy reach out and just been like, he should have been off like weeks ago, and they should have just been having him working out. Like he needs so much strength is that, a lengthy playoff run is not going to help him develop long term. Get him out of the lineup and be like, you're done. I understand why it's disappointing for fans though, because he's a player who saw NHL time this year, is supposed to be that guy who maybe fills in for Brock Besser in the short term and is your goal scoring winger. It's like you'd want him to be like the frontline scorer on a team going on a deep run. Like how exciting would it be if he had 12 or 13 goals in the playoffs right now and 20 points, and everyone's like, look at this, he's coming, he's ready, he's pushing for a spot. When it's like, hold on, he's not ready yet. And who's to say a strong offseason can't get him a little bit closer, but it's going to be a short offseason for him. So it's pump the brakes, but it is understandable for the type of player he is and the physical maturation that he's at this point. He just needs more time. He needs to get stronger. He needs to get faster. He needs to get more consistent.
You say short offseason. In a sense, though, even just being around the team, not chewing up all the calories playing the games. I mean, this is forced sort of, and this allows the team to have eyes on him a lot longer. Like if they were eliminated 2 rounds ago, guess what? He's off into the ether. They don't have eyes on this young player. He sort of keeps them underfoot for a little while longer, doesn't it? And they can sort of monitor what he's doing right now. This might be advantageous even if he's not in the lineup.
Yeah, the thing is that there's like a in-season workout and fitness and routines, and then there's off-season workout and fitness routines. And I'm guessing, and without knowing for sure, that he hasn't moved into off-season training mode yet, as he's with the team. Where now you're eating lots, you're lifting twice a day, you're really putting it on, trying to gain that lean muscle mass, which is so difficult to do while you are playing. And even though he's not playing, so like you said, he's not burning all the calories that he would be. I'd be skeptical to think that he's fully moved into that off-season training mode where they're like have their hands all over him, which would be great. Which would be great to just monitor him and be like, here is what you're doing in your plan. But you have to hope that he's working with some good people back home in Sweden too.
We got a couple of more weeks of this, and again, until they dispense with the 15th overall pick, we're going to ask you about prospects who could fit there. Tell me about Justin Carbonneau, this winger from the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, because the more I read about him, the more I find myself liking the profile.
I mean, on pure skill and like pure upside, I could make an argument that this is a top 5 player in the draft class, to be honest with you. IQ doesn't really support that prognostication, but like he has highlight reel handles, like arguably the best handler in the class, almost to a fault sometimes in the queue, where he would just like, okay, first I'll deke this guy, then I'll deke this guy, then I'll deke this guy, then I'll go and do something. What I really liked, I saw from him in the CHL USA Top Prospects game, he was playing on a third line. And he played like this, north-south game, chip and chase, got in hard on the body, and I was like, where's our human highlight reel Carbonneau gone? And I liked that diversity in his game. Top end, like you're looking at a guy who could be like very top end here, is like Philip Forsberg. Like he's on the wing. He has that kind of skill potential. But like I said, the brain doesn't carry as much weight as his skills, and which is why you're going to see him available probably in that 12 to 20 range. But he's an interesting one, a winger option for them. It's definitely interesting.
Well, and he's not small. Like he's taller than 6'1". He's 200 pounds, and that's an interesting size. And then speaking of interesting size, this kid from Windsor, Jack Nesbitt, a center iceman. He's an awfully big, 6'4", an awfully big boy. I know some people have him more in the 20s, but I have seen him floated in the mid-teens. What can you tell us about Jack Nesbitt?
Honestly, I think he's going to go right around where Vancouver's picking, and I wouldn't touch him in that spot if it was me. So, he is a 6'4" left-handed center who like can flash some like hard skill and like net front stuff. But everything, his entire potential hinges on mechanical development. And so he's like a stiff, narrow skater. His handling abilities don't match up well with his feet. Didn't do himself any favors at the U18s. Saw his role reduce consistently as the tournament went on. I had one, and it's in the guide there too, where, I get scout quotes and executive quotes for the EP draft guide. And one guy just said like, I wouldn't touch this guy in the second round. Like he doesn't even think he's going to be a good AHLer sort of thing. So I think the discrepancy on where people have him is going to be wild. But like you said, he's got the size. He plays in the middle of the ice. He has flashed some good stuff. He has some decent point totals. Is that I fully expect him to go right around that kind of 15 zone. But if it is Vancouver who does pick him, it won't be getting an A rating from me.
The better version of him is McQueen, of course. Have you heard any more updates on his health? Has anybody laid eyes on him? Like, what's the confidence level in his rehabilitation from this back injury?
Yeah, really interesting stuff. So, we got to talk to him at the Combine in Buffalo there, and, 6'5", he's a monster. And, I snapped a little pic of him doing the pull-ups, and he cleaned out nine clean pull-ups. The back must have been feeling good, the muscles there. Apparently misdiagnosed during the season, and then the second injury had nothing to do with the back. He says he's good to go. He completed all the combine testing. He was the most scrutinized player from teams for physical testing, sure, especially on the heels of Caden Lindstrom, right? Where he went to the combine, didn't do everything, but like it was all roses and like everything's all good. And then, of course, he missed a full year of hockey. So I think that on another one on skill alone, like I could make an argument that Roger McQueen might be the most, the highest upside player in the entire draft class. And so it behooves teams to probably value those kind of high variance players at the very top of the draft in this situation. But I expect him to be there. He's not getting to Vancouver at 15, I don't think. I know Pittsburgh really liked him at 11. Like I think he's gone by 10, 11.
6'5" and a quarter, 198 pounds for Roger McQueen, the big Brandon center iceman.
Great skill.
Are we going to see this Chinese defenseman selected in the first round? For those who don't know, his name is Simon Wong. He is nearly 6'6". He is 222 pounds. He plays in the Ontario Hockey League, and he would be a trailblazer, right? The first ever Chinese national to go in the first round.
Yeah. His mom bought a junior A team earlier too, so he could play on it. It's an interesting. They got some generational cash going through that. Yeah. As one does. Yeah. I don't expect him to go in the first round, but anything when we hit 25, it's like anybody, like it won't. No name coming out of there will surprise me, and because of how big he is, and like scouts have flocked to see him this season because of that size profile, and they're like, well. He's such a project, though. He's so unrefined, but it's like the potential is very, very big, almost as big as he is.
Well, draft him, and if your ownership runs into any financial trouble somewhere down the road, maybe we'll be there to help out. Lastly, Cam, does Edmonton have one more or two more wins in them? What do you expect in what's left of the Cup final here?
Florida's taking it in 6 here. They're taking it in home ice. Bobby Lou working the drum tonight in house. He's gonna motivate the boys and take it home. I mean, it's hard to bet against Connor and Leon though, with their backs against the wall. It could easily go back to Edmonton for 7. Then all bets are off. But I think Florida's been the better team throughout the series, right? A couple of overtime winners Edmonton's needed, and then a few games where Florida's just dominated for long stretches. I think they close it out in 6.
All right, he's doubting McJesus here. You're on record.
Risky. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for this, my friend. Until next week.
Okay. Talk soon.